Rain of Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Can I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there? Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that race line. Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC has hired Lincoln Riley. Oh, yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant of Troy Radio, episode 514. Coming to you on Monday, October 23rd. We're going to look back at USC's loss to Utah, open up the mailbag, listen to the rant line, take your calls, your emails, and so much more. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Rant of Troy, like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rant of Troy. Be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, wherever you can find a pod. We are there. Not Stitcher anymore. That one's dead. But one day I'll forget about it. Wherever you can find Spotify. There you go. Spotify's one. As always, our email address is rantoftroy@fansite.com and our phone number 818-643-7227. I'm your host, Mike Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Rant of Troy studio in Los Angeles, Elisa D'Artola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are back, and the CarCast was lively, I think. One of the most active in terms of the chat was going off. We got 1 billion comments, people not happy. There's, Bill Plaschke is writing about the early failures of the Lincoln Riley era. Feels like there's just, general unrest in the Trojan family and in the USC sphere.
And in this episode, I fully intend to be the voice of reason who talks some people off the ledge, because I'm not saying it's good right now. I am not enjoying watching USC football. Like, I'm in my feelings every weekend too. Like, I'm not saying I'm immune to that. But there are levels, and I think people have gone off the deep end with this.
I actually think this is a case of optimistic, Alicia.
I don't know. I guess it's optimism if you can sit back and recognize that, like, just because things don't go your way doesn't mean the world is ending. I don't know. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated about a lot of things, but I'm really frustrated about the reaction of this fan base to some missteps that are being there's a lot of nonsense being spoken. There's just a lot of nonsense being spoken. Well, and like, people in the chat are bringing up the nonsense, which is so, okay, fine. We'll talk about the Lincoln Riley record. I had a tweet thread about this. Bill Plaschke, in his infinite wisdom, wrote a column this week, who saying that Lincoln Riley has, failed in his second season at USC, and basically using Clay Helton's record as a head coach to bludgeon Lincoln Riley with. The thing that's going around right now is that Lincoln Riley has the same record after 2 seasons, after 22 games, as Clay Helton did at USC, 17-5. Okay, sure, that's true. If you want to cherry pick and manipulate things, by all means, go ahead and say that. I have 2 different rebuttals for both sides of this. My first rebuttal is Clay Helton coached 9-10 games before the 2016 season, friends. He had been the head coach at USC for 9, quote unquote, 10 because of the Vegas Bowl. 9 games in 2015, he coached the team. So his first 22 games as USC's head coach in that tenure was actually 15-7, and actually should have disqualified him from being considered for USC's head coach, because he had not been a good offensive coordinator. He had not been a good head coach, and he still got the job anyways. So the criticisms of his first 2 seasons were all based on the knowledge of 2015 and what he had been as a coordinator and who, like, whether or not he was warranted of being USC's head coach and getting to work out the kinks and all of that. So in reality, it's 15-7, first and foremost. But also, if we're going to sort of put that all to the side, using Clay Helton's record in 2016 and 2017, when Clay Helton won a Rose Bowl and a Pac-12 title, as an argument against Lincoln Riley, is the most asinine thing I have ever heard, and it's just plainly obvious, and it only exists there to push your buttons. You, USC fan, I'm talking to you, the one who is scarred by the Clay Helton era. That line that's going out there is designed to push your button because it's supposed to be like, oh, it's just like Clay Helton. Clay Helton's record in his first 2 seasons was objectively great. It was better than most head coaches in the country ever achieve in any of their pieces of their tenure. 17-5 in 2016 and 2017 for Clay Helton got him a long-term extension. It kept him in the job after 2018 when he did enough to get fired. It kept him in the job in 2019 when he did enough to get fired because those first 2 years were so good in terms of record. So don't turn around and tell me, oh no, Lincoln Riley is 17-5 in his first 22 games. The sky is falling. How can this be happening? Oh my gosh, USC's in such a terrible state. The team is so bad. It's all going wrong, guys. Everything is terrible and it's never going to be well again. 17-5. That's your where USC is awful and no good and nothing ever is going to happen again. The 17-5 is end of the world. Look at what Texas went through in their with any of their coaching staffs in recent memory, and tell me they wouldn't have taken 17-5 after 2 seasons. Look at what Nebraska has gone through. Look at what Wisconsin. Okay, fine. USC didn't hire Lincoln Riley. You wanted them to hire Luke Fickell. What is Luke Fickell doing at Wisconsin right now? Question. Wanted USC to hire Matt Rule. What is Matt Rule doing at Nebraska right now? There are teams around the country who don't even get close to 17-5 in their first 2 seasons. And you want to use this as the example of how terrible it is at USC? No, I accept the expectations at USC are higher than most other places. This is what comes with the territory. But the expectations are also the most eye-rolly, annoying things in the world. Because you don't get to the point where you can start winning national titles and actually doing good things unless you express a certain amount of patience and understand that it takes time to build a thing and that it takes time to put your stamp on a thing and that things don't come quickly or easily for anybody in the country. I mean, Eric Tang in the chat brings up Jim Harbaugh is looking for a job. You know what Jim Harbaugh was doing in 2020? 5 years into his tenure at Michigan, a great hire for Michigan. Coming out of the NFL, a head coach that Michigan thought was going to bring them back to glory. 5 years, 5 seasons at Michigan, and Jim Harbaugh was looking for a job. Jim Harbaugh was taking a pay cut in order to convince Michigan to keep him around to then turn around and have the success that he's had recently. Like, I don't know what I don't know. I think people are being insane. I think people are, I'm not saying Lincoln Riley's doing a good job this year. I think Lincoln Riley has misstepped in many different areas. His decision to keep Alex Grinch, his decision to bring Alex Grinch to USC and then keep him after that first season will go down as one of his biggest blunders, one of the biggest blunders in USC assistant coaching. Because if he had made a change at defensive coordinator, we're probably not having the same tenor of conversation that we're having right now. But he made that choice, and he has to live with it, and that's on him. And the way he's managing the offense right now hasn't been good enough. The things that, as we've talked about in the past, the things that they did on the offensive line, a few things went wrong there. There's things that need fixing in this program. I'm not saying it's a good season. But come on, guys. take a chill pill, take a deep breath. I need to take a freaking chill pill and a deep breath too, but
All right, what a start to the episode. Welcome. One of the things too about I think it's unfair to use the middle of a season for Helton, but it's also not necessarily fair either to use the first full season. Like, you can't really compare an interim head coach to Lincoln Riley, especially when Clay Helton didn't make changes. He kept so many of the same staff. He kept all the players and everything. So much of it was a continuity thing. He kept T. Martin. Like, he kept so many guys that it wasn't necessarily a giant change in regime, right? Like, that was sort of the whole point. The big change was him on the defensive side of the ball. And SC did get better under Clay Helton and defense in 2016, but then regressed. But yeah, let's get to the rant line. You guys had plenty of thoughts after USC's loss to Utah, the fourth straight loss to the Utes at the Coliseum. Here's what you guys had to say.
Radio Detroit Radio. What's up? It's Dave from Orange County.
This is Michael on the 563.
This is Tony from Denora, PA.
Hey, Rain of Troy. It's Dan from Valley Village again.
Sterling from Graham Terrace, reporting live from the Coliseum.
Dan from Chicago. Johnny from Tennessee.
This is Jim in Tennessee.
Philip out in Texas.
This is Greg from D.C.
This is me, Tom, calling from Kansas City.
This is Judy from South Bend. I'm not even sure why I called, because I have no words for this. I have no words. I don't even know what I'm watching here.
Gosh, that first quarter looked so good and so promising. Now here we are. It almost feels like seasons in its death spiral.
What is happening?
It's beyond me. I don't know what to say.
It hurts more losing to Utah than to Notre Dame.
Love this team, but they make me so angry. There's no reason that we should have lost this game.
Man, if we would have just kicked the extra points, we'd be playing the overtime.
It's like, something we've seen too often from USC.
Really depressing, though, because we can't stop anybody.
I think we're better than this, but for some reason, we're not.
The way that we find ways to lose is incredible.
Why did Lincoln decide to stop running the ball when they were having success in the first half? What happened?
You have Caleb Williams, Zachariah Branch, and Marshawn Lloyd. And somehow we're only able to get a field goal.
Unbelievable. Outplayed, outcoached, outclassed.
Dear Alex Grinch, why don't you hate the Utes as much as I do? 2 out of the last 3 games, SC has faced a backup quarterback, and today they faced a backup's backup. And it was like we were in the fight of our freaking life.
I don't know if Lincoln is heading to the NFL, but he needs to get his shit together. Sorry for saying shit.
Lincoln Riley, not really sure what you can do other than throw 30 screen passes a game.
But you darn well need to start making some better decisions and replacing some people that need to be replaced.
SC got to do something.
Please, something has to change out this offseason. Some major changes need to come ASAP.
For what? This is a Clay Helton offense and a Clay Helton defense. I no longer have to stress about why aren't we playing up to our potential, because this is what our potential is. We are this team.
This team is soft. And when we go to the Big Ten, we're going to get out-physicaled. We're going to get destroyed.
I mean, can we at least hire Belichick to pay this Utah coach? I'm not one of those people that want to give it to Lincoln Riley. I'm not an idiot. 3 years ago, I told my boy something who's an Ohio State fan, and he said, you're not even relevant. So Lincoln Riley has done that. We are relevant. But we are on our way to being irrelevant unless we can fix the problem.
This Utah team is better coached. They show that routinely. USC fans have to give Utah respect. I hate to see it, but we have to freaking do it.
Hey guys, this is Jeff in Copenhagen. Heard that bus that hit us last week? Well, it just backed up and smacked us in the butt. Well, maybe ran over us. And I'm going to add on and say that I think we should be prepared for lots of buses hitting us between now and the end of this football season.
Over the last few weeks, I've just come to the realization that this team just isn't good enough. They play hard, but they just aren't good enough to get it done.
I'd like to thank the USC Trojans and the Utes today for finally getting me to that place that I needed to get to. That place where I have no expectations going for it.
I thought of a positive out of all this. Look at all the rest of the horses getting. That's it. Fight on.
Fight on, as always. At least it's better than the Dodgers.
Fight on.
Hey, fight on.
Later.
Thanks for everybody calling into the Redditor Rant Line. Of course, you can call in at any time. 818-643-7227 is the phone number. Lots of fiery reactions to SC's heartbreaking loss to the Utes.
Yeah, and well warranted. That loss kicked me in the stomach. Like it was I was talking to you about it. It's like why do these teams all just do these teaser rallies and just try to crush us even more? Like it's the hope and belief that kills you. USC was down 2 touchdowns in this game and they fought back and they took a lead with 1 minute and 46 seconds to go. And they got a 3rd and 9 stop on defense. And then Bear Alexander followed through and got ejected. Only one of which was like a necessary thing, but
and then 20 whatever yards to Bryson Barnes.
Yeah. It's frustrating as all hell. I 100% get it. I'm on board. I was very frustrated watching that game. What it comes down to me, though, is USC's defense screwed the pooch. USC had a lead with 1 minute and 46 seconds to go. USC had a lead. Lincoln Riley's decision to go for 2 points, I ranted about it on the CarCast. Absolutely a huge mistake. But when it comes down to it, USC was ahead with 1 minute and 46 seconds to go, facing a quarterback that they should not have allowed to drive down the field and get into field goal range. And maybe that's why I'm in a little bit of a different position than some of the people in our chat and some of the USC fans out there, because to me, it all still rides on the defense. And yeah, I want more from USC's offense. I want Caleb Williams to elevate them and to be elite. And I want them to go out there and barnstorm a good defense. But also USC's offense was playing a very, very good defense. And I agree with everyone. Like, don't disrespect Kyle Whittingham. Kyle Whittingham and that Utah program has been built over and over and over, has proven over and over and over throughout the years that they are not to be taken lightly and that they are not a joke and that they will go out there and make your life very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And I can accept that defensively. I can accept that for USC's offense facing that defense and not being at their full throttle best. I want to see them at their full throttle best. I think there are areas where they can be better to be at their full throttle best. But when it comes down to it, USC got a lead with 1 minute and 46 seconds to go. And again, it's USC's defense not being able to go out there and get a stop. And the more I look at it, the more I think USC's defense just needs to go out there and get the damn stop if you want to win these games.
Well,
now Notre Dame's a completely different loss. I will not blame the defense for that one, but like on this day, a better defensive coordinator wins the game for USC. That's where I feel.
Well, when the team is constructed in a way where the team, we've talked about this till the cow comes home, right? Like, this is the team that needs to win despite their defense. When the defense lets you down and you don't win the game, it shouldn't be a shocking, revelation, right? Like, yeah, was SC outcoached? Yeah, Kyle Whittingham is an elite coach. He's going to outcoach a lot of people, and Riley thoroughly got outcoached in this game because he didn't have an answer to those things.
Alex Grinch got outcoached.
And Alex Grinch got outcoached. Yeah, 1,000%. Yes. And so, yeah, I think that the offensive struggles, I think SC should have been able to find a way to subvert those.
Can I put
well, hold on. I think that the fourth quarter, SC the tough part is SC's best quarter of the game was obviously the first quarter where they scored the 2 touchdowns, but The second best quarter
Unknown caller.
is the fourth quarter, right? Like it's the fourth quarter where they're able to put together the two long drives that end up in field goals. You needed to get more of those. The one in the missed time fumble was an absolute killer. They're able to get the spark from Zachariah Branch. They're able to get the pick six. Like things are finally starting to come for SC in that fourth quarter. And then they just can't finish it off, which I think is the biggest frustrating part. But it shouldn't have taken that long for that fourth quarter to come, right? And that's because of the missteps on defense. That's not being ready for a solution to stop Sione Vaki. It's not being able to stop Bryson Barnes, a guy who hasn't done that to anybody, right? Like it literally made him look like it's Cam Rising, right? And so it's a very difficult situation because on one hand, I think that in the grand scheme of things, losing to Utah is not this big shameful thing in the sense that Utah is a two-time defending Pac-12 champ. They've gone to the Pac-12 championship game four times in a row in a full major regular season. We know that Kyle Whittingham is an incredible coach. You shouldn't be shocked that they go out and they beat people. But this is a Utah team that SC was favored to beat. This is a Utah team that had all the injuries. This is a Utah team that didn't have Cam Rising at quarterback. This is a Utah team that came in with an offense that was brutal. This is a Utah team that had a ton of injuries. They were without their two best tight ends. They were without multiple running backs. They were down a man at wide receiver. They were down one of their best defensive ends. Like all these things. And yes, losing to a team that is well coached is going to happen every now and then. But when you have the game in your hands and when you're not able to beat a third string quarterback and it's, twice in 3 games that a backup quarterback has sort of gotten the best of you.
But
it's a problem. And it's and you can't. This is why you don't bring Grinch back after last season, right? Like, because in this situation, you've got to be able to overcome it. And SC wasn't able to overcome it on offense.
Yes.
They just weren't.
Yes, they weren't. But that's why I keep turning my focus back to the defense, because I get that people are frustrated with the offense. I understand that. But USC's offense
But they signed up for that.
Yes, and Lincoln Riley signed up for this. He accepted that his offense was going to have to be all world against every single opponent because he was going to allow the opposing offense look better than they are in every single game by keeping Alex Grinch. That is the devil's deal that he signed up for. And USC is losing games because the offense isn't all world against every single opponent. But I would like to also put into perspective here. USC had 6.91 yards per play. That is almost a full yard per play, better than anyone has done against this Utah offense, against this Utah defense. The best mark of the season was Baylor, 5.95 yards per play. USC put up 401 total yards against this Utah defense. That is better than any team has done against this Utah defense. USC's even if you take out the pick six, the 25 points that USC scored on offense were better than anyone else has done against this Utah defense this year. Why did Oregon State beat Utah this year? Why did Oregon State beat Utah while only scoring 21 points? Because they held a Utah offense that should not be allowed to score to 7 points. Why did UCLA have a chance against this Utah team while only scoring 7 points themselves? Because they only allowed this Utah offense 14 points. Like, when it comes down to it, Utah's offense was not very good, was not very good, and USC made them look as good as they have looked all season. In every statistical measure and every eyeball measure, everything like that. That is the difference in this game. In an ideal world, I want vast improvement from USC's offense. I want Lincoln Riley to recognize that subbing on offense and allowing Utah to drain 20 seconds off of the play clock on every single play and slowing down the pace of the game is ultimately not helping your team, because your offensive linemen are standing there in their stances for 25 seconds while nothing is happening, and then you're scrambling to get the playoff because the ref isn't releasing the ball to you until 8 seconds left on the play clock. That Shotgun put out a video of this exact thing happening. But Utah was gaming the system that the NCAA needs to fix, by the way, of
But anyone can do that. You need to have an answer for
right.
that.
Well, that's my point. Utah was gaming the system. But if they're going to be gaming the system, you need to have a response to it. And what is your response to it? You could have just started going up tempo. You don't need to sub out your packages every time. Just go up tempo, put the opposing defense on their heels.
Yeah.
USC didn't do that until the end of the game, and lo and behold, that's when they scored the points. You need to make that adjustment quicker. Marshawn Lloyd, you cannot fumble that football. I'm sorry. You cannot fumble that football. Caleb Williams, you cannot have the ball fly out of your hand on 3rd and 6 in a critical point of the game. Just can't happen. Like, those are things that can't happen offensively. Those are areas where USC is shooting themselves in the foot offensively. And still, the offense did to a really good Utah defense what no one else this season has done to a Utah defense. The difference in the game is the fact that Utah's offense was made to look better than they have looked against anybody all season by a landslide.
Yeah.
So to me, it really just comes down to fix your damn defense, hire a new defensive coordinator, get that hire right. And all of a sudden, all this smoke, all this chatter, all this, oh, blah, 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 it's not well coached, no, blah, 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 it's the sky's falling. Like, all of that settles and goes away. Because when you're playing an elite defensive team that doesn't have a good opposing offense, your defense can make sure that the offense that's in front of them, which is mediocre at best, puts up sort of mediocre point totals, and you win the game, and everyone is talking about how USC, got a win over a tough ranked opponent, and you move on to the next week.
Yeah, Paul in the chat says that the way Riley lost the Notre Dame game was shockingly embarrassing, and then flat against Utah is simply unacceptable. I don't think SC was flat against Utah. They came out in the first quarter and they scored more points against Utah in the first quarter than Utah has allowed on average all season. Utah came into the game allowing 12 points a game. SC scored 14 points in the first quarter. They had their 2 best drives, very first 2 drives of the game. They ran for 100 yards, 44 more than Utah's average in the first quarter. The problem wasn't that they came out flat. The problem was that they didn't make the adjustments to the adjustments, that they didn't make any adjustments throughout the game that would make improvements, especially on offense, to get through those little grindy periods where they ended up stalling for 5 drives in the middle of the game. That was the problem. I don't think that's flat. I think SC came out flat against Arizona. They did not come out flat against Utah. The other issue, and we're going to talk about this more because I know you want to go over some Jeff Schwartz tweets, and maybe I'll save that for then. But like the style of game plan on offense was drastically different than the style of game plan on defense, and I don't understand it. Which we'll save that when we get to the Jeff Schwartz stuff. But let's get to
Paul to respond. Paul in the chat again said flat, meaning Utah's roster is decimated. We had no business losing. Utah's offense is decimated. Utah's offense is bad. Utah's offense was vulnerable. Utah's defense is and has been extremely good all season. Like, straight up all season, consistently. The thing that's kept them alive, the thing that's kept them in games, the thing that's kept them unscathed, except for once through the first 7 games of the season. Like, Utah's defense is not flat. Utah's defense is very good, and they have been very good year in and year out. And that's what happens when you have a good defense.
Yeah, you got to be able to combat a good defense for sure. And one of those ways that you can do that is by risking it for the biscuit, like joining DraftKings, because they are running a new promotion to help to support the podcast. You won't want to miss this one. New users can place a $5 bet to instantly claim $200 in bonus bets. You'll also be rewarded with a separate no sweat single game parlay every single day. When you opt in, all you have to do is use our code Reign of Troy when you sign up. Using that code not only helps support the podcast, but gives you great bonuses. If you consider signing up for DraftKings, make sure you use that code Reign of Troy. Of course, the offer is only available to new customers who are 21 plus and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly and check the episode description for the full terms of the offer to see if you qualify. Alicia, we got a bunch of news to get to, so let's get to that. All right, let's start with game time. We've got a game time for the big one, USC and Washington, coming up in a couple weeks. Is it the same big one as before? Probably not, but USC and Washington next Saturday, not this upcoming Saturday, but next Saturday, set for 4:30 p.m. Pacific on ABC. Presumably, that means Fowler and Herbstreit, right?
I hope so. You would imagine. That's generally the crew that does the primetime ABC broadcast. So that's exciting. I like a 4:30 ABC broadcast. Always feels good.
Yeah, it's the.
I doubt no complaints, right? Everyone
4 and 5 o'clock are the ones that people complain about the least.
This is the sweet spot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Other news to get to is the polls. The Trojans are down to 24th in the AP poll. Now behind UCLA, who's at 23, behind Tulane, who's at 22. Washington sitting at 5. They didn't fall after their near slip up against ASU at home. Oregon staying there at 8. They moved up 1 spot. Oregon State at 11. Notre Dame up a spot to 14. But it's UCLA and Oregon and Washington that are still on the schedule that are ranked above the Trojans. Cal this week, not ranked. Not ranked and no votes. Also, Arizona, still no votes. And
the people don't know. The people.
UNLV's got a vote, though.
They do.
But not Arizona.
Wisconsin has a vote.
Yeah, so.
I think that USC at 24 is completely reasonable. 6-2 is not a great record, but when your 2 losses are to ranked teams in top 15, you're going to get some leeway there. But USC has to win this week to stay in the rankings to create a ranked matchup against Washington. And again, when it comes to the rankings, all that matters is that you win. This was you sent me a Kirk Herbstreit tweet where he was sort of telling off some Ohio State people who were pissed off at his rankings because he has Ohio State 4th behind Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirk Herbstreit's response was just win out, and it's fine. Like, yeah, that's basically how it works when it comes to the rankings.
Yeah, absolutely. The pretty much everyone from Utah on up, top 13 is winning you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Winning you're in. That's all you gotta do. SC no longer winning they're in.
As long as you're not 2 losses.
SC is win and hope you have the tiebreaker that gets you into the Pac-12 championship game, which A, who would bet on that now? Nobody. B, I have to imagine that if SC did win out, they would.
Be in top what?
Would be in the Pac-12 championship game. Beating Oregon and Washington would probably do it, but again,
yes, because Oregon already has a Pac-12 loss. USC would have a tiebreaker over Washington.
It would matter what happened to the
Utah
Washington game.
Yeah, Utah would have to lose to one of Oregon or Washington, or
you could end up in a 3-way
or a
tie
random loss to ASU.
What are we talking
Arizona and Colorado. I'm not interested in necessarily having this conversation, but it is a good reminder too that like you're not out until you're out, and USC is not out. So whatever, we'll see.
But they're out.
There's a lot of naysaying. There's a lot of doomsdaying. I get it. I'm not predicting USC to beat Washington or Oregon, but also let's have real quick because we have a lot to get to. Let's have the Caleb Williams discussion. There was a tweet that was sent out this week and some chatter online about should Caleb Williams sit out the rest of the season. I think it was Emmanuel Acho who said it. I don't want to get which one of them.
It's
wrong.
Emmanuel Acho. He's the hot take artist.
Yeah, so he said that Caleb should sit out the rest of the season, make a business decision because the playoff is gone and the Heisman's gone and all this kind of stuff. And that is the antithesis of sporting to me. And also rather insulting to a player like Caleb Williams, who very clearly has a strong competitive spirit and wants to win every game he plays and wants to win every play he plays. Like, USC is not out of the Pac-12 title race. Caleb Williams can still go out there with his teammates and win every game. Like, Caleb Williams should not be looking at the rest of the schedule and thinking, I'm definitely going to lose to Washington and Oregon, so why should I even play? That's not what Caleb Williams is thinking. That is not what's in his mind. And it's ridiculous to even suggest that would be that's the way to go for him.
I think the Caleb Williams, but like the talk about Caleb Williams, so much of it is so weird to me. The idea that like every single story that comes out about him is something from the GQ article that was in like August, like vaguely tying back to something that his dad said that is some general vague quote that just sounds like agent posturing, and everything comes back. Oh wow, he's thinking of he wants ownership. The arrogance of this guy, like,
yeah,
it's part of the territory is, you know, when you win a Heisman, and he absolutely did not do himself any favors with the fingernails last year with the message on the fingernails, right? But like, I think so much of the angst against Caleb Williams and all the talk is just not there for me. Whatever.
Yep.
All right. We got over under. We got a lot of over under stuff to get to and a lot of emails. So we're going to plow ahead because we talked more about the game over at the beginning than we thought we were going to. So let's get to over under.
You've got mail.
Wrong button.
So you're going over.
I'm feeling bold. Give me that over.
I'll go under. I got to take an under here. I got 3 unders to take.
I'm going to do an under here.
All right. Let's start by looking at our records going into it. I was 23-19. You were 22-20. Sorry, 20-22 coming in. Not great. I have a little bit of a lead there, but these things can turn in a hurry. Let's look at your first over-under. Was Utah sacks. You said over-under 4.5 Utah sacks. I went over on that. I was bullish on the Utes defensive line. You took the under because you get locked in there. It was 3. It was only 3. SC did a very good job of not making sure the offensive line was in many positions to give up a sack with a lot of screens, a lot of quick passes.
And even when they did go longer, I thought the offensive line held up very well against the 4-man front. They had a little bit more trouble with blitzing, but all offensive lines have bigger issues with blitzing because it's imbalanced. So, yeah, I don't think the offensive line was the problem in this game.
Well, we talked about it before. This was the game plan. The game plan for Utah was the one that they should have had for Notre Dame.
Yes.
And I think things would have been different. Would have been better? I don't know, but it would have at least been different. Let's go to your next one, or my first one is over under 33.4% third down conversion rate for the Trojans. Utah was the number 1 team in third down defense, holding teams to just 23.1%. You took the under on that. Locks me into the over. It was over. SC was 4 of 11, 36.4%, the most Utah has allowed all season.
Yeah, which, you know, sucks for me in this game, but is another representation of how again, I know the offense was frustrating, but the offense still did, relative to the opposing defense, were doing better than most teams have done against this Utah defense. So you have to put the performance in perspective. That's not to say that the performance was great. I'm certainly not saying the performance was great, but I do not think it was as bad as it's being made out to be relative to the difficulty of the defense in front of them. Because we've seen what a bad USC offensive performance looks like against a good defense. And
Well,
it
wasn't Notre Dame. Yeah. It certainly was not Notre Dame. Yeah. It could have been surely worse. Let's go to your next over-under, which is over-under 12.5 plays of 10 plus yards for Utah. I took the under stupidly. You got locked into the over. It was way over. It was 16. Utah only averaged 10.2 10 plus yard gains coming into the game, and they had 6 total by Sione Vaki. 4 of them were Bryson Barnes rushes.
Yeah,
including 2 on the last drive.
This isn't surprising. I think that the surprising thing here is that you took the under. It's always over.
Utah's
I wrote in our
offense
notes,
looks so abysmal coming into this.
I wrote in our notes, both of these teams suck at explosiveness. And when it comes down to it, USC's defense just sucks harder.
Let's get to the next one. I said over under 4.495 USC's sack adjusted yards per carry. Utah only trailed James Madison in rush defense coming into the game, allowing only 66.8 yards per game. But a lot of that was because of their sacks. That's how college stats work. SC needed to get over 4.495 to qualify for this over-under. You took the under on that. I'll get locked into the over. It wasn't just over. It was almost double. USC averaged 8.0 yards per carry when you parse out the sacks.
And even with the sacks, USC averaged 6.3.
Yes. But
I choose not to run.
Yes.
12 total carries for USC's running backs. Big mistake.
And only a couple after the first quarter, which is...
It's like USC has decided that they're going to play the like ball control game only by their pre-snap strategy instead of just run the ball and elongate a drive that way.
Yeah, I don't understand. You need to run the ball more. You need to run the ball more when you're having success. You're having success against the best running rush defense team. I can understand playing against Utah and at some point needing to abandon the run.
Yeah. Oh, at 28-14.
But they never got to the point to abandon the run.
Yeah, at 28-14, I understand if you were like, okay, we're in catch-up mode, but like that wasn't till later.
Yeah.
USC had opportunities to prevent it being 28-14.
Yeah, there was no need to abandon the run.
Yeah.
The way that SC did. Let's go to your last over-under, which is over-under 2.5 USC passing touchdowns. Utah had not given up more than 2 TDs since Caleb threw 3 in the Pac-12 championship game. He had thrown 5 at Rice Eccles last year. I took the under, not feeling too confident that there were going to be a lot of touchdowns in this game. You took the over because you get locked in there. And it was under. It was 0. Caleb Williams had a 0 touchdown performance through the air.
Not good.
Not good at all. Yeah. Let's go to time of possession for the last one. I said over under 26 minutes, 59 and a half seconds. Basically over under 27 minutes for USC's time of possession. Utah was one of the FBS leaders, 4th in the country, time of possession coming in. You took the over. I took the under, respectively, and it was under. It was way under. 25.8. It's right. 25-18.
This is where I'm mad at pre-show Alicia, because pre-show Alicia has to go in and make her picks by moving the little faces over to the thing in our graphics thing. And pre-show Alicia was being real dumb, and in-show Alicia recognized it immediately, but it was too late to change. So that was stupid. My bad.
Welp. All right, for the week, I went 4-2. You went 2-4. My lead grows. I'm now at 27-21 on the season. You're at 22-26. But how did the Rotbots do? Who went 6-0? Nobody.
Man, the Rotbots are having a rough time.
I think it's 3 straight weeks. No one's gone 6-0.
Weeks.
The season leaders, the race is starting to get good, but there is a little bit of separation now. G-Pat firmly in first place at 33-15. Vincent San Diego right behind him at 32-16. And then tied for third, 3 games off the lead, is Jay Vandy and Steven Chod at 30-18. So it's getting good. It absolutely is getting good there. All right. We got a bunch of stuff to get to in the mailbag. So let's get to that stuff.
You've got mail.
All right. Let's start with emails. You want to take the first couple emails?
Yeah, we got an email from Tony, Michael, and Alicia. This is Tony from Denora, PA. We made several good plays on both sides of the ball, but overall we were outplayed and outcoached. So many mistakes on the field, coaching calls. Tell me why Shelby is in coverage on a running back, and it happened twice in the game? How do you give up a 26-yard QB scramble in a crucial time of the game? He did that throughout the whole game.
Yep.
How do you give up 500 yards of offense to a team that hasn't done anything close to that all season? I've come to the conclusion that this team just isn't good enough. I'll be pulling for them for the rest of the season because they're my team, but it doesn't look good. Fight on. All very valid. We will be asking why Braylon Shelby was in coverage twice to get burned in this game. Yeah. Many times.
Not once, but
twice.
But twice.
As for Bryson Barnes scrambling, I have to admit too, like, why are we surprised about that one? At this point,
we shouldn't be, right?
It just happens every week, guys. Like, I don't know what else to say.
So I'm of 2 minds on it slightly. One of them is, okay, so the game plan should have been make Bryson Barnes beat you, and if he does, well then, geez, I guess tip your cap. But that wasn't the way it should have been. Like, it should have been make Bryson Barnes beat you with his arm, and if he throws for 400 yards, then, geez, touche. That wasn't the situation, right? Like, they gave up the runs on third downs, and you know, there were some QB powers that they gave up too. That, like, those are not the type of things that you shouldn't have been prepared for. Like, those are the things you should have been prepared for. So the wheel route to Vaki on the first drive, okay, but it, like, if your game plan is to make him throw the ball, but then you need to have a reaction to it the next time you see that matchup, and they didn't, which is a gigantic red flag.
At the same time, like, I don't necessarily want to be naive. At this point, if USC had done a defense that was designed to let Bryson to force Bryson Barnes to beat them with his arm, like, given the track record of the defense, I'm not sure that that's a winning strategy either, because the defense is just not.
But again, this is why when you have a defense that, you know, that we sit here and talk every week, it's the 28-point defense. And we sat here last week and said, well, against Utah, it's probably 21 because Utah's not that great.
Well, but that's like a 28-point defense would have won the game.
But I see, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Email from John in Oakland. Hi, Alicia and Michael. Wow, this team is a complete mess and transfer portal disaster. Turns out Lincoln Riley is a horrible head coach and a terrible judge of both assistant coaching and player talent. Clearly, it's time for the new AD to make a costly change and look for a better option. Time to delete all of my USC football social accounts, and I'm done with this waste of a team. USC football is regressed once again into being a national joke of a college football team. No way it's worth watching this USC team under Lincoln Riley lose to Oregon, Washington, and UCLA in the weeks ahead. More honor in just forfeiting now and continuing to be laughed at on national TV. Maybe see you in 3 to 4 years with the new USC head coach, John in Oakland. We've been getting emails from John in Oakland for like 7 or 8 years. I've never seen John like this.
John in Oakland, I really hope this is all sarcasm, to be honest. If it's not, I need to talk you off the ledge here. Deep breaths, everyone. Just deep breaths. If Lincoln Riley was a horrible head coach and a terrible judge of assistant coaching and player talent across the board, we all agree he's a terrible judge of his defensive coordinator. 100%. Yeah. Like, I don't think that's even in question anymore. That's fine. But if those were the case, then he could not have won 11 games last season with a transfer portal roster and all I don't know. It's sad to see this kind of email. I want to believe that it's sarcasm.
I think there's a million reasons to be critical of Lincoln Riley, and there's absolutely we need to talk about how much of a disaster it was to bring. If you're going to bring Grinch back after the Cotton Bowl, you gotta get that right? Like it's got to pay off for you, because if it doesn't, that is just it's brutal and it's a torpedo, right? And he didn't get it right. And that's a major mistake from him. And it's a terrible decision and all those things. Right.
Yeah.
And we talked about how the transfer portal stuff hasn't worked, whether your thought is that the guys weren't as good as you thought they would be, whether it was that he had to rely on them in the first place, whether it's that he's not developing them, whether they're not getting the same amount of production. Whatever the argument is, it didn't work this season like it worked last season, right? The flip side about this is, like, for all the reasons that you can say, okay, maybe Lincoln Riley isn't the guy who's going to like win you a national title and all these things. That very well could be the case, because again, 99.9999% of coaches do not win national titles. So that's always going to be the most likely outcome of all of this stuff.
Yeah, every hire you make, it's unlikely that any hire you make, it is unlikely that they will ever win a national title.
Right.
Even at a USC, even at a Michigan, even at a Texas.
Yes, but the flip side is, if we can sit here and say, okay, well, he doesn't have the upside that maybe you thought. Even if you sit here and say that, I don't understand how a horrible coach doesn't have 6 years of great positive success.
Yeah.
Like I've seen, one of our really good friends is an Oregon fan, and he's like, well, Mark Helfrich took Oregon to a national championship game. And he's like, yeah.
But in year 3, they fell off a cliff.
Exactly. And Lincoln Riley inherited Stoops, what Stoops had put together, just like Helfrich had inherited the Chip Kelly stuff. But then Helfrich crashed and burned at Oregon. Lincoln Riley didn't crash and burn at Oklahoma. He came to SC and immediately turned around a 4-8 team to 11-1. So, like, yes, there are big question marks that need to be addressed, and there are things that he needs to get better at. He needs to get better at clock management. He's got to make better in-game decisions. He's got to get better about finding ways to adjust in game. A million different things. He's got to get rid of Alex Grinch. He's got to make a great hire there on defense. He's got to figure out something to do with special teams, whether that's hiring a full-time special teams coordinator or delegating it better than he's doing. There's a laundry list of things. But the idea that he was always this fraud, and that's not what John in Oakland is saying, by the way, but like, that's the part where I'm like, I can't buy into that idea.
No, it's not based.
Because
It's
the
not based
total
in
fraud
fact.
doesn't have 6 great years on their resume.
If we're talking 4 years down the line and Riley has not learned from these mistakes and is losing games and basically being Clay Helton, then we can have an actual conversation about that. But to have that conversation right now is not based in
I don't know
fact.
that. I don't know that 4 years is,
Okay,
is
fine.
the
2 years. Let's say 2 years. 1 year, whatever it is. I don't know. Right now,
yeah.
where USC is at is a dip for Lincoln Riley. But the fact is it's a dip. It is not the norm. So why are you talking about it like it's the norm is the question I want to ask.
Well, this is why
there are things that are the norm, which is the defense isn't good enough. Well, yeah, why is that? Because Lincoln Riley has a soft spot for Alex Grinch and it's burning him. That's why I want to see Lincoln Riley make the ultimate move and find a DC who doesn't burn him every single year. But when it comes down to it, that's the albatross around his neck.
Yeah.
And I would rather that be the albatross around his neck than be in a situation with Clay Helton where every year USC's offense is not that great and the head coach is the one who's responsible for it. And so who are you going to I would rather have the opposing the coordinator that is that can be gotten rid of be the problem than the head coach's side of the ball. So I don't know.
Yeah, but you still got to follow through. You still got to actually get that right and all those things. Let's go to a voicemail we got from Tim in Riverside.
Tim from Riverside again, part 3. Yeah, just several weeks ago, Alicia started talking about Riley. She mentioned Riley, and I was like, oh, the tone is changing. I think it was maybe week 3 or 4 of the season, probably. Well, he's only 40. He's learning lessons now. Actually, yeah, maybe it was Alicia, but Riley's only 40. He's learning lessons now that other coaches learn later in their careers. He will learn, get these bad ones, this pain and this experience, and he'll be better at it. Well, this is my point, which is I don't want Riley then at 40 still having to learn. Give me Riley at 50 when he's ready to bring all that experience and actually win championships. I don't think you pay a coach $100 million and give him the head coaching job at USC to be learning on the job. You know, I want to make the Alabama hire after Saban already won a championship at LSU.
Thanks, Tim, for the call. It was a long call, had to truncate it a little bit, but Alicia, your thoughts?
I think you want something that is not possible because what you're talking about is a very, very small pool of coaches that are not available or are putting you in the same position as you're in with Lincoln Riley right now. Okay, who has won a national title? Who is available for you to go hire that has won a national title? Nick Saban going to Alabama was a once in a million opportunity because he had won a national title at LSU, left for the NFL, and then happened to be available for Alabama to go pick him up. That doesn't happen. National title winning head coaches do not become available ever. Kirby Smart is not available. Nick Saban is not available. Ed Orgeron, there are a million reasons why you should not hire Ed Orgeron as your head coach. LSU will tell you why. LSU got rid of their national title winning head coach. Same with Gus Malzahn. Not Gus Malzahn. Gene Chizik, got ousted out of Auburn for reasons.
Well, Ed Orgeron is Gene Chizik in Cajun.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Jimbo Fisher. Okay, Jimbo Fisher at Florida State gets hired by Texas A&M. How is that going for Texas A&M right now? Because that's the thing. Every hire you make is still a 50-50 proposition, and you are just crossing your fingers and hoping that the guy that you hire can figure it out, even when you make the right hire. And I can tell you, with 100% certainty, Lincoln Riley was the right hire. That doesn't mean that Lincoln Riley will get USC to the promised land. He still has to figure that out. He still has to prove that he can make the decisions that get him over the hump the way that we see coaches like Kirby Smart and Nick Saban get over the hump. or Dabo Swinney. But like Dabo's not available, and if he was, Dabo's let the game pass him by and has not shown any willingness to embrace the new modern college football. Why would you hire Dabo Swinney right now? Urban Meyer has said now a million times he does not want to come back to coaching. So that's to one side. But also, there's a million reasons why you don't hire Urban Meyer either. Like, who is this mythical head coach that you're thinking of? They don't exist. This is why I'm so frustrated with USC fans and the response to all of this. Like, the coach that you think leads USC to the promised land, or that you identify as the one that leads you to the promised land, like, they don't exist the way that you think that they exist.
Well, so one of the things that we talked 2 years ago, we did a long, like hour and a half, 2-hour episode where we went through and tier listed every single possible cut. Like, it was like 50 names.
Yes.
We didn't have Lincoln Riley on because we didn't think he would remotely be realistic, right? But that's beside the point. One of the things that we talked about is it's all about mitigating risk, right? Like, going out and hiring a coach is like recruiting. There's 5-star coaches and there's 3-star coaches and there's 4-star coaches, and stars matter because the higher you're rated, the more likely you are to pan out. You can still not pan out. Like that's how it works, right? Like there's fewer 5 stars that exist, and their flame outs are more spectacular, but they still give you the best chance of getting there, right? And one of the things is you look at, okay, so the guys that are and that have won national championships, how do you find the person that fits that profile, right? Well, okay, Kirby Smart. Who fit the Kirby Smart profile? He was a national championship winning coordinator. Well, that would have been Brent Venables. And I think that we talked about it. Brent Venables was on our
high on our
list. Yes, he's absolutely someone who would have fit that category. Yes. Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney is Clay Helton.
Yeah.
He's literally Clay Helton.
Yeah.
He's someone who was promoted within.
The best case scenario for Clay Helton was
yes,
Dabo.
He was someone promoted within when Terry Bowden got fired. And he panned out. He was able to figure out the thing for it to work to him. So that doesn't exactly work. And you can't go out and literally get Dabo Swinney because he's not going to leave Clemson. If he's going to leave Clemson for anywhere, it's Alabama, right? Ed Ogeron, you don't want someone in the profile of Ed Ogeron, who's just a defensive line coach. Like, the most generous comparison to that is like Mario Cristobal. And I think would people have been happy about Mario Cristobal
when USC had the opening? No, I don't think so, because his reputation by then, I think, was already kind of like, I don't know about that. He wasn't.
He was recruiting well and stuff. Like, I think that Mario Cristobal could have worked at SC, but would people have been happier than they were with Lincoln Riley at the time? No. Nick Saban. Who would have been the comparison for Nick Saban? There wasn't one. And you can't go out and get Nick Saban unless you were going to pay him with Saudi blood money and triple his salary, and that was never going to happen.
I think you could have offered Nick Saban $100 million for one season of coaching, and he still would not have left Alabama.
Yeah.
Why? Why would he do that to himself?
Let's talk to somebody who does have the Saudi blood money, Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher has a national title on his resume. Do you want Jimbo Fisher? Even 2 years ago, would you have wanted Jimbo Fisher? No, you would have not wanted Jimbo Fisher. Urban Meyer. I think Urban Meyer would have been someone who would have absolutely checked all the boxes. And if it wasn't for the off-field stuff, whether it be his health or his horrible reputation in choosing character people underneath him and overlooking all of those things, if it wasn't for any of the off-field stuff, he absolutely would have been the guy. But also, if it wasn't for all those off-field stuff, he would have never left Florida. He would have never left Ohio State.
He would still be there.
And 2 years ago,
And then maybe
he was in Jacksonville embarrassing himself with my Jaguars.
Yeah.
So, like, again, that wouldn't have necessarily worked either. Yeah. So, yes, the idea of like the fantasy man that you want doesn't exactly exist. And so who's going to be that next guy? Lincoln Riley fits a lot of what the ideas are of who could be the next guy.
Yeah.
If he doesn't pan out, he doesn't pan out because most of those hires don't pan out.
Well, and Lincoln Riley being a success at USC is dependent on Lincoln Riley making the changes and making the decisions that lead to improvement. Kaylee in the chat said, I know some fans expect miracles, but some are more practical. I think a lot of us just want progression improvement. Year 2 hasn't been an improvement from year 1, and that's problematic. Yes, that is a completely reasonable statement, and I 100% agree. And I think if I felt like more people were talking with that kind of just sort of level-headed, like I just wanted to see improvement this year, and I don't see it, and that worries me, I wouldn't be ranting as much about this fan base. Where I push back a little bit on that is we went into the season knowing first and foremost that this schedule was going to be significantly harder than last season. So like the improvement that you're looking for certainly hasn't come, but the level of regression from last year is...
I don't think it's as strong as people think that it is.
Yes, because I think that there is...
Especially like if I would love to know, like if you transferred yourself back 12 months ago after the Utah game and how the sky was falling after the Utah game last year, it's not overly dissimilar. Where it's different is that nobody was calling for Lincoln Riley's head 12 months ago.
Yeah.
But I think so many of the same talking points are absolutely there.
Yes.
Especially after the Arizona game too. After the Cal game, people weren't happy.
Yeah.
People were furious.
But it was easier to just have it be all on Grinch because the offense was just, rolling. But the offense also wasn't really playing very many challenges. Now, the difference is USC's offense did play very well against a very good Utah defense. So I'm not saying there hasn't been regression.
They validated it against UCLA and Notre Dame by winning those 2 games.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that SC is going to validate all this by beating Oregon and Washington. But I think it is like a very similar situation, save for the Notre Dame game. The Notre Dame game is just the complete outlier because that's the one where SC just absolutely gets jiggle bagged. And Lincoln Riley hasn't gotten his ass kicked that badly in a game in a score line that wasn't a playoff game where he just got beat by the national champion, right? Like that hasn't happened in the regular season.
At the same time, like when I say that Lincoln Riley needs to show improvement, I like ideally you see drive to drive improvement or quarter to quarter improvement or game to game improvement. But when we're talking about sort of big capital I improvement, that doesn't happen in the span of like 2 weeks. That doesn't happen in the span of 3 weeks. You don't fix those problems in that span. But one thing that I was encouraged by in this Utah game is that USC's offensive line got absolutely wrecked the 2 weeks prior, and going up against a very good defensive front that has wrecked other offensive lines. I thought the offensive line, the individual players on the offensive line, the coaches, everybody involved with the offensive line, clearly to me responded. Whether it was the individuals just playing better or Lincoln Riley having a better sense of, I need to do a little bit more to help my offensive line succeed. Like those things were little things that helped. But on a season-wide sort of perspective, USC's offensive line has taken a step back. And that has accounted for a lot of the offense maybe taking a slight step back because there's not that level of trust in the offensive line. I think saying that Caleb has regressed is probably I don't know.
I wouldn't say that Caleb has regressed.
I struggle to say that Caleb has regressed. I think Caleb has some bad habits that are burning him a little bit more this year than they did last year. And sometimes that's how it goes too. Is like what you peak as regression is just like the things that he got away with last year. Maybe he's just not getting away with now. I don't know.
He has less help around him on the offensive line and at receiver. I think that hurts. I think there's also less of a commitment in the running game because of the offensive line, and those things helped him out. We talked about it last year. Caleb Williams' production last year was not amazing compared to what Jalen Hurts and Baker Mayfield and what Kyler Murray had done in the same offense. His numbers last year were not like those guys. He did the things he did. He had the wow you moments and he had the big moments last year, and he struggled in those things this year because he had the Arizona game where he pulls the rabbit out of his hat there. He has the great first 3 quarters against Colorado. Yeah, but like if he would have turned the game around against Utah, I think that would have been something else. But yeah, wouldn't say regress. He just hasn't had quite the same season. One of the things that you talked about that the offensive line got better after the big loss to Notre Dame. One of the things that I think that needs to be talked about more with Lincoln Riley about his defense and his unwillingness to make changes on defense is that he's never truly gotten beat enough to make those changes. He's lost no more than 2 games every season. And I remember that when we talked about the 2017 team, right? That I feel like SC fans hated that team. They went 11-2 and won the Pac-12 championship game. But they go to the Cotton Bowl. They lose that frustrating game to Ohio State, right? And it's one of those moments where people wanted heads to roll after that game. They wanted T. Martin fired. They wanted changes on the offensive line. They wanted all these different changes, and it didn't happen. And we talked about it at the time that it's one of those situations where the team didn't fail enough to for Clay Helton to rationalize that the changes were necessary, because they win 11-2 pre-bowl. They win 11-2 and won the conference. So why should I make changes? I win 11-2 and won the conference, right? Yeah. That's essentially what Lincoln Riley has had every single year that he's been a head coach.
Right.
Last year he went 11-1 in the regular season, and if Caleb Williams doesn't get hurt against Utah in the Pac-12 championship game, SC goes to the playoff. If they stop Cam Rising on the 2-point conversion at Rice-Eccles, they would have gone to the playoff even with Caleb Williams getting hurt with the same defense and Alex Grinch. So like, I can understand why Lincoln Riley didn't make the change, because, well, I didn't fail enough to make it necessary, and he's never failed enough to make it necessary.
In terms of wins and losses, yeah.
Yes, in terms of wins and losses. Now, yes, I think he should be more ruthless to make the changes on the offensive line. It shouldn't take getting blown out and having a horrific performance against Notre Dame to make those changes. I'm 100% in agreement with, I think, everybody on that, right? But sometimes it does for people, and sometimes it does for coaches, because they are going to stick with what wins them games, and it's won him games, right? And so if this year ends up being the year that ends up as 7-5, where it all goes to hell and it crashes and burns, and SC loses to the teams that are better than them at the end of the day, because this is a loaded Pac-12 schedule that actually does have Oregon and Washington on it versus last year, that might end up being the best case scenario, because it's what forces Lincoln Riley to make all the changes that he's never had to make before.
As someone who had to hit rock bottom in order to make changes in my life to better my life, yes, and always remember that these people are humans. These are not robots. These are not like football brain, blah, blah, blah. Like, they are human beings just like all of us. And yeah, a lot of the time, most people need to have extreme reason to make change. Human beings are very averse to change. We don't like making change unless we have to, especially when it means, firing somebody. Like, nobody likes to fire somebody. It's if you can get away with not having to do that, the vast majority of people will choose not to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's very understandable to me how this happens. Is it acceptable for a head coach that is aspiring to national titles? Yeah, you got to be able to make those tough decisions. You have to be able to cut a friend if your work, like, this is why you don't work with your friends. This is why you don't work with your family, because you need to
Right.
be able to make those tough decisions. But let's not kid ourselves and say that those decisions are easy when there is a human being on the other side of you who you know their family, who who you might believe what they're selling you about why something is going wrong in one form or another. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just think it's all more complicated than it gets talked about.
All right, let's go to a voicemail we got from Fred.
Hey, Rain, it's Troy. This is LA Fred calling. After watching Saturday night's game and then the post-game CarCast, I was fired up emotionally as I've been about a USC loss in several years. The defense this, the offense that, blah, blah, blah. All of us are saying it. All of us are thinking it. But after a day to regroup and calm down a little bit, even though losing to Utah again stinks, and much less a depleted Utah team at that. Isn't it still better and more enjoyable to watch this program and this team than under the disaster years with Helton, save the Rose Bowl over Penn State? This is only year 2 with Lincoln Riley. And I think the quick turnover from last year and the good season, plus a returning Heisman Trophy winner in Caleb, set unrealistic expectations for the program this year. We all know changes can be made. We can all see the changes need to be made. The defense, the linebackers, a lot of the defensive coaching staff. Hello, Alex Grinch. The offensive line. Heck, even the overall recruiting has to improve. But I think Riley's a smart enough guy to see this himself, and I think all these changes will be made this offseason. I just think we need to pump the brakes on all the fired Lincoln Riley talk and comments that I've seen posted everywhere on social media. He is one of the best coaches in the country, and he's more than earned the trust to get USC back on the path towards playoff and national championship contention. Now, having said all that, I am going to reserve the opinion to change my mind if we don't see those changes moving forward. I'm going to conclude with, have a good week and fight on, everybody.
Thanks for the call, Fred. Yeah, I agree that, like, it's all there. If Lincoln Riley has to see it, he has to see that there's no other option than to getting rid of Alex Grinch this year. There's literally no other option.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to prove that he can see it, but there's literally, like, he can't not see it, right? He can't not see it.
Yes, there is no way he doesn't see it. There is no way he is not having everyone around Lincoln Riley can see it. Lincoln Riley can see it. Alex Grinch can probably see it too. Like, it's going to happen. But I love this call from Fred because it's where I'm at. It's where I'm at. Like, going back to, like, the change thing that people are reticent to change. Jen Cohen just got hired as USC's athletic director. The athletic director before her made a top level hire in terms of being ambitious and going out and hiring a head coach with a proven track record who could come in and stabilize the program. Jen Cohen is not going to make a rushed decision to do something like get rid of Lincoln Riley, unless given ample reason to do so. And that ample reason has absolutely not even become close to being where we're at yet. So where I'm at is this. Lincoln Riley is USC's head coach, and he will be for the foreseeable future. So I can either sit here and tell you and say with a whole lot of, like, unearned definitive confidence that Lincoln Riley will not figure this out. He will never see what's wrong on defense. He will never see what's wrong on the offensive line, even though obviously he's already taken steps to fix that, whatever. He will always have the same flaws that he has, and this is the way it's going to be, and blah. And if I sat here and said that, then my internal self would turn around and say, okay, if that's truly what you believe, then you need to pull a John in Oakland, log off, and stay away for the next 3 to 4 years and just not engage. Because why would I continue to watch USC football if I had that much disbelief in the direction of the program? Like, I watched Clay Helton for years in and years out, and podcasted about Clay Helton for years in and years out, and fully understood that it just wasn't going to happen. And that was the most miserable podcasting experience of my life, to the point where, like, y'all are lucky that we're still doing this, because there were distinct moments during the Clay Helton era where we could have shut up shop and said, we're not doing this anymore, because there's no point in doing this anymore. It's just not, like, we're just not going to do that. So, like, if that's the point that you are at, then I highly encourage you to stop watching USC football. Go find an NFL team, go find another college football team, go find something else to do with your life. Because if that's the mentality, then I'm sad for you. Instead, I'm going to look at it and say, okay, these are the things that Lincoln Riley is not getting right. These are the ways that he can fix it. And man, I really hope he can do it. And like Fred, if down the line it turns out that he was not capable of doing those things, then I reserve the right to change my mind and say, and come to a point where I'm at, where I say, well, you know what? He is incapable of doing this, and it's time for me to shut off. But, like, that time is not now. That time is certainly not now. So it's all about perspective and managing the reality that's in front of you. I don't know.
We got a super chat from Mr. Andrew 2800.
Hey.
Mr. Very Positive Andrew, who says, all's not lost. LSU won it all in 2007 with 2 losses.
See, that's fun. I like that mentality. I mean, again, people are writing off USC as though it's guaranteed that they're going to lose to Washington and Oregon. Meanwhile, every single weekend I watch Washington look like they're trying to have the other team beat them. So I don't know. I'm not predicting wins in those, but, like, I'm also not going to sit here and say there is no chance that USC wins those games. I don't know. This is why you play the games. This is why we come on every week and preview a game, because we don't know what's going to happen, and we look forward to see what's going to happen. Yeah. And that's the whole point of it.
Yeah, you mentioned the Helton era. I think part of the reason that I find this season so disappointing is that we've talked about this before. Like, it was a grind, an absolute grind for year after year after year to sit here and podcast 3 times a week, and even more because we were doing a bunch of Patreon stuff at the time, and talk about this program when every single comment we could get was fire Clay Helton, then USC wouldn't do it. And it's like, what could we say every single week? It was miserable. It was a miserable existence. In terms of, like, work-life balance, it absolutely sucked. Like this is not our day jobs, right? We come here to podcast to enjoy what we're like. This is fun that we get to do this. It's fun that we get this opportunity to be able to do this. And signing up to do it when it's just every single thing is like this major indictment of Clay Helton, when he should have been fired years before he was, and he wasn't, and there was only so many times that you could have said that, and yet there was never anything else to talk about. It was brutal, and it was absolutely mind-numbing, and there were so many times where we didn't want to do the podcast anymore because it was miserable to do that. It's miserable to open up to edit the Rant Line and hear every single call every day, every week. You know, like I don't want to spend my Sundays doing that, right? And so then SC hires Lincoln Riley, And they go 11-1 in the regular season last year. They nearly go to the playoff, but they don't. And then they come into the season this year with all the expectations and Caleb Williams coming off of the Heisman season and all of this. And suddenly we're right back in the shit. Like, going through dozens and dozens of voicemails about fire this guy and fire that guy. And like, we do this podcast. Like, I don't want you to not call in. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have these opinions. Have the opinion. Like, I don't want to.
It's just that we can have different conversations than. It's interesting to have different conversations than just.
The only solution is fire. Should be critical. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine to be, like we said, like, it's fine to be critical. I agree with most of the criticism that we're seeing, that is at least lobbed in a sort of reasonable sense. But there's a difference between like the criticism and the, well, this is bad and it will always be bad because this person is incapable of getting better. And it's like, well, okay, if that's the way it is, then why are any of us here right now?
Yeah,
like, why do any of us care?
Yeah.
Tim in LA.
Thank you, Tim in LA, for the super chat. It says thank you for still podcasting.
We're not trying to. We're not trying to make like, this about threaten
us.
Anybody here. Yeah. We're just getting real with you guys. That it's like it becomes a slog, and under normal circumstances, like for instance, I'm a big Brother fan. Part of the reason I was so freaking angry at the Notre Dame get lost the way it was is because like things took a turn in the Big Brother season that I didn't like, and I was just feeling like, okay, so when things happen in Big Brother that make me like angry or that make me just whatever, like I can just choose to stop watching that show, and it doesn't matter. Like I can just say, you know what, this show doesn't bring me joy anymore, so I'm just not going to watch it for however long I need to get over that. And with USC, like for many, many different reasons, but like we can't shut it off. We still come in podcast. We still have to sort of live in this. And it would just be a lot easier to do that if USC's fan base as a whole just took a deep breath and was able to separate.
But it's not just SC's fan base.
It's
like Oklahoma people in the comments, and it's
random like Notre Dame and Utah and UCLA and Oregon and whatever other, I don't know what new fan base will pop up and randomly just sort of like start dropping the weirdest things in our lives. So I don't know. It's just
we sign up for this. We know what we're signing up for. So. I don't, this isn't woe is me. At least I'm not trying to make it woe is me, but, let's continue. Alex from, over on, Discord says, if last year's team played this year's team, who would win?
Last year's team would win.
I think so too, because of the offensive line.
The offensive line of last year's team would have an easier time with this year's defense than this year's offensive line with someone like Tuli Tuipulotu and last year's defense. And I think USC has several better players across the board, like on the defensive front on this year's defense. But I think those are negated by how much better USC's offensive line was last year than this year.
Yeah, I think that, we talked about earlier that, the defense needs to be better than last year. And then for the first few games, we're like, the defense is better than last year. And then I had convinced myself that even last week, the defense is better than last year. It's still not good, and it's still not good enough, but like it's better than last year as a comparative point. I don't think that anymore. It's that you can't definitively say that it is or isn't better than last year is the problem, right? Like that is the problem.
Yeah.
So, the difference is the offensive line. So I would say last year. LA Fred sent us a message on Discord that says, I know you guys don't focus on recruiting, but what do you feel is a bigger hindrance to recruiting, specifically on the defensive side of the ball? Alex Grinch and the poor play of the defense and the perceived lack of development, or choosing not to get in competition with other programs in terms of offering NIL money to recruits?
Honestly, recruiting, I have never had less of a sense of what it takes to be good in recruiting than now, because there is the transfer versus recruiting NIL sort of calculus, and so many recruiting battles we look at, and the thing you hear, which is probably just what has always been the case, but now you get to say it out loud, which is like, well, this kid really cares a lot about the NIL stuff, and USC isn't really investing that much money in NIL for recruiting, or whatever it comes out to be. So I'm sure that calculus plays a role. I don't think that USC's defensive staff is in a strong position for recruiting, because it is clear to you, me, and everyone else's mother that Alex Grinch should not be the defensive coordinator for USC next year. So that's a little bit of a problem in terms of recruiting people to the program. But as with all things, it's usually probably a bunch of all of the little things together, and changes depending on who you're talking about specifically as the recruit.
I'm not the recruiting expert. Go follow Gerard for that stuff over at USCFootball.com. But I'm a believer that SC recruits itself to a big extent. There's a reason that Clay Helton didn't have the recruiting classes that Sark did, but also he still signed a number 1 overall recruit in Corey Foreman. He still got 5 stars from time to time, and et cetera, right? So, and SC is still going to get those regardless of who the coach is, right? Paul Hackett got Carson Palmer after the whole John Robinson firing, right? Like, those things can. I think it's the NIL stuff. I more so than the coaching, and it's the I think that's it, because if you had, they're losing some NIL battles to schools that like don't necessarily have a better argument than SC does.
Yeah.
So I think it's the NIL, if anything there. All right, let's go to some questions we got in the chat, and then we'll wrap this up. We're gonna rapid fire questions we got in the chat, and then we will finish up with a voicemail we got from Dan in Valley Village. Okay, so let's see. What do we got in here? Scrolling through. Brenton says, do you think Juju stays committed? Juju being the quarterback in the 2025 class? 26?
Here's the thing with recruiting. No one is a sure thing until signing day. So like,
2026, Julian Lewis.
Like 2026 is so very far away. I don't know. Is Lincoln Riley the head coach in 2026? If that's the case, then probably.
What
Julian
conference
Lewis.
is SC in 2026?
Is Julian Lewis still USC's first choice at quarterback in 2026?
His World War III happened in 2026.
That's so that's so far out. I got no idea.
I've been around long enough not to trust any of those those super far out commitments.
I don't trust commitments in the current cycle of the class.
Yeah.
To 100% all be sticking, let alone 3 cycles down the line.
I remember a day where I wrote a stupid article on ranchroy.com that said you can plan SC's quarterbacks for the next decade. And it's because they had gotten the commitment of Max Brown, and they had David Sills.
Tathan Martell?
They had David Sills commit.
Right.
But he had been committed since 2010 as like he was like a 9th grader or something, 7th grader, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he was 2015 class. And so I'm like, well, whoever wins the starting job this year, either Kessler or Wittick, then it'll be Max Brown, then David Sills. So basically not until like 2022 will you need a new quarterback. And that didn't pan out because It never pans out like that. Like that's just not how it works.
Can't count chickens before they hatch.
Yeah.
Too many factors.
Bryce Young. Yeah. Matt Corral. Like there's things absolutely change. Mark says, I know you're both not in favor of midseason firings, but is Grinch an exception at this point? He's too much of a liability right now.
Personally, I would just pull the plug because there's no.
You would pull the plug? When did you get to that point?
I don't know. I've been there for a while. I don't know.
But you've been anti midseason firing forever.
I don't like. Well, my whole thing with midseason firings is okay. You fire Alex Grinch. Okay, who takes over? Someone who was on Alex Grinch's staff, who was helping build the game plans and doing all that. My one thought is like maybe you fire Alex Grinch and someone else is calling the defensive plays, and maybe you improve in that way. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's a way. I do not think that Lincoln Riley will do a midseason firing, to be honest, of Alex Grinch. Would I personally, for my own personal, do it so that we can stop talking about it, so that it can just be done, and then it's like everyone can just accept that this is a thing that happened, and then we can all sit around and say like, look, Lincoln did the thing that we all said he needed to do. Isn't that good? Like, for my own personal mental health, yes, I personally would fire Alex Grinch yesterday, but I am not in charge of that decision, and that's not going to happen. So
yeah, firing Alex Grinch now, the only thing it does is give you a mental and emotional readjustment.
I mean, there's an argument you lose to Washington and you fire Grinch, and then maybe you use that as like a.
But I think
But at that point, what's the point?
I think you only make a midseason firing if there's a bye week at play. There's not.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, a midseason firing, you should not expect to improve.
Yes.
You should only expect not having to talk about it anymore.
Yeah. Which is what I want.
Which, yeah, maybe that's worth it. But you're not gonna improve anything. In a lot of ways, you get worse. And Oklahoma, when Lincoln Riley did fire his McNeil, when he fired McNeil in 2018, they got way worse on defense in the middle of the season. They won all those games, but they gave up 50 points every week. So like, you just gotta commit to the bit at that point, even if you do. Let's go to a comment we got from Kaylee in the chat that says, and the strength and conditioning coach, we need a better one. I have two thoughts here. There are two things that I think that are there's coach speak and there's fan speak. Like, coach speak is, oh, we're just taking one game at a time. Oh yeah, we want to win national championships or what as a program, but you gotta take one. We're just trying to win today. Like, that's coach speak, right? Fan speak to me is blaming so much stuff on the strength and conditioning coach and things like identity, when those are things that are impossible to ever measure, and so they become pawns. Is Wiley a good strength coach? I have no idea. I don't think literally nobody does. Like, is SC soft because of Wiley? Maybe, maybe not. But like that, he's a pawn. Like, every single team who is not winning a game in the trenches wants to fire their strength coach. And guess what? You do it, and the next year you're still soft. Oh, but the off-season conversation is, oh, but we're not soft this year because we brought in Bill Smith, and Bill Smith is whipping us into shape, and oh, we've cut weight like we've never cut before. It's all bullshit. Like, maybe, but who knows? Like, it's impossible. Like, injuries. Is it the strength coach of why you have a bunch of hamstring injuries? I don't know. It's impossible to judge those things, but they become pawns. And then, it's the whole bit that if you listen to Solid Verbal of like, you get a new defensive coordinator and all like SC will bring in a new defensive coordinator next year. And all the talk in the spring is going to be, oh, we've got this new attacking mentality. We've never been such an attacking mentality defense ever before.
That's my favorite thing about some of the criticisms I'm seeing of Lincoln Riley. There's no accountability. And it's like, dude, all last year, that was the thing that would, the big change in the locker rooms. There's so much more accountability. And it's like, well, okay, so what? I mean, it was so I don't. Okay, to me, it's a buzzword. Strength coaches are a buzzword. USC has had a strength coach every year that I've been a fan, and no one has liked that strength coach.
With the exception of Carlisle. Chris Carlisle. Why did they like him?
Because USC was winning football games.
Bingo! There we go.
Yeah, and who got fired by the Seahawks? Chris Carlisle. So I don't know. Strength coaches are the ultimate. Easy to blame when you're losing, but hell if I know in what way do they actually contribute or not contribute to a winning team. My new rule is if you're going to call for somebody on the staff to be fired, you need to tell me by name who you would replace them with, and they have to be a realistic person, and you didn't just go to Alabama's staff page and tell me what Alabama's strength coach is called. If not, I don't know.
Yeah, Paul in the chat says that guys are underweight. Yeah, but also, what if that's the mandate from the coaching staff?
I was going to say, I was just going to say, because the section that we skipped today from Jeff Schwartz, where we had some tweets from Jeff Schwartz complaining about the size of USC's defensive line. Like, I looked at that defensive line, the numbers for the weights on USC's defensive line, and I can tell you most of those guys cut weight. I don't know that was a Benny Wiley decision. We know that Corey Foreman cut weight because that was a choice of the coaching staff. Like, we know that sometimes that's not that's a directive.
It can be the wrong choice. Yes. Don't criticize the choice. Absolutely. The other thing about the idea of identity, to go back to, the reason that I think that identity is like fan speak is because no one talks about identity if you're like, people will say SC has no identity, but then also in the same sentence say that they run 50 screens a game.
Yeah.
So then wouldn't that be their identity? And Lincoln, this team is just soft. Okay, well then isn't that their identity? Like, they have no identity. No, what you're saying is they have no winning. Like, that's winning equals identity. That's what it is. That's what it is. So, all right. Alicia is messaging me that we've gone too long, so we're gonna wrap this up.
I'm just saying we've got an hour and 45 minutes.
I know. We said we're gonna make this one short.
Somebody has to get back to their day job. So.
I know. Okay. Final question. Joe in the chat says, "I love the podcast. Longtime follower. Alicia and Michael, is that a perfect time to talk about the lasagna theory?" Oldie but a goodie.
I mean, I still stand by that.
It's one lasagna.
If you have two lasagnas, you have a top of the lasagna. You can't just put those lasagnas together and ignore the fact that there are now two tops of your lasagna.
It's one lasagna. Yeah. All right, we're gonna wrap it up there. We've gone long. At least she's got to get back to her day job, night job, whatever. Night job sounds bad.
I thought we had a voicemail to get to, though. That's why I've been trying to move us along, because I know we have things still we have to get to.
We'll finish with Dan from Valley Village.
Reign of Troy, it's Dan from Valley Village again. I want to throw out an analogy for you. I think this team reminds me of a relationship. Your beginning of your relationship is hot and heavy and it's steamy, and you're doing stuff all over the house or all over the apartment or wherever young people do stuff now. And I want to say that was kind of our first year. We were hot and heavy and we were doing stuff. And then you start to become a real relationship, and maybe it's not as steamy and maybe you're not doing it so much anymore, whatever it is, of course. And you start to fart around each other, and maybe you leave the bathroom door open, and you fall into a regular relationship. And I think that's where we are now. I think this team is our regular relationship. I think people are starting to figure us out. And I think that we cannot rely on Caleb to keep it hot and heavy all the time. I think we are becoming, dare I say, a mediocre team. I don't know. Look, life is lived in relationships that are not necessarily hot and heavy all the time, and you have ups and downs and whatnot. But what I'm sensing here is that we're having a little bit of a down part of our relationship with the team. This has probably been one of the clunkiest analogies that you've probably ever heard. But for that car engine one last week, which was Chef's Kiss, beautiful. Anyway, I'm still sitting in my garage angry, and I needed to vomit this out because it's my therapy. Anyway, bye, Don.
I love that. I love that analogy. I love that analogy too. Aside from it just being entertaining, but Michael and I, we're not newlyweds anymore. I think technically, because we have been married for a year and a half now. But
is that when it stopped? When does it stop? Who knows?
I always thought newlyweds meant you were in the first year of your marriage. I could be wrong. We've had our first wedding anniversary, whatever. But the reason I love this analogy is because it very much fits with sort of what I've been calling for this whole time, which is, I think there was the honeymoon period. I think there was the excitement and all of the new stuff of we're in together, we're all married, blah, blah. And then you hit the point where there are things that each of you are doing that are not good for the relationship. And you get things that are either irking you or that the other person is doing or that you're doing and all this kind of stuff. And in a healthy relationship, which I like to think that you and I have, Michael.
I don't know. I interrupt you too much. According to the YouTube comments.
Allegedly, because, I don't interrupt you 50 times a show, but whatever. For the record, I have literally never had a thought in my head that Michael's interrupting me too much because I'm but no, my whole point is in a healthy relationship, what do we do when there are things when there are things that are bugging us about each other or about whether it's leaving dishes around the house or
never do that.
The distribution of of labor jobs or whatever, how many times am I taking the dog out versus how many times that you're taking the dog out, blah blah blah. What do people in a healthy relationship do? Instead of what they don't do is they don't scream and yell and say screw you, I'm out, or scream and yell and just sort of build up resentment and believe the worst in their partner and all this kind of stuff. No, what you do is you sit down and you have a conversation. You express, these are the things that frustrate me. These are the things that I need more from you, or you come to me and say these are the things that I need more from you. Paul K in the chat says communicate and listen. Yeah, 100%. You communicate and you listen. Paul K follows up, which Riley does not do. Which Riley does not do is jumping the gun, because we have not seen what Riley does after a season like this. We have not seen how Riley responds to things going wrong for him in a season. And realistically, I know that we all want fixes to come immediately in season, and there are things that can be fixed in season. But the frustrating thing about following sports teams is, especially teams that don't have a trade deadline that they can make changes at and do all that kind of stuff. In college football, what you get is what you get. And if you screw up your off season, your season's going to be rough. And there's very little that you can sort of do to really change a big swerve in the wrong direction. So what we're looking for now is Lincoln to listen and recognize what has gone wrong and to fix it. And it's jumping the gun right now to sit back and say that he's not going to do that. That's not a healthy relationship with your head coach, guys.
Yeah, so we will see. We will see if who takes out the trash at the end of the season.
I need Lincoln Riley to take out the trash.
Yeah.
I need you to take out the trash too. The trash is kind of full.
It's not that far for you to do it. It's just right across. All right. So, see you next time.
See ya.
See ya.